2 years ago, some friends and I set out to turn a Sovol SV08 into a no-limits 7-tool-headed monster that money couldn't buy. And then, right as we were about to finish it, Sovol announced their own commercially available 7-tool changer for just $1,200. So, was it worth it? And more importantly, when should you build it yourself versus just ordering one and waiting for the box to show up? Stick around to the end too, because the answer might just surprise you. Let's get after it. First things first, like any good caper, this project just would not have been possible without the hard work and ingenuity of an all-star crew. And since my mama done raised me right, I'll start the video by once again profusely thanking everyone who helped make this project possible. All right, with the very important thanks out of the way, let me really quickly catch all of you up on what it took to actually get this machine running. When we last spoke, we had 2 tool heads docking and printing, but things were precarious at best. Since then, we've had to, once again, redesign and reprint all of the docks, this time with a deep groove that allows a larger clearance between the belts and the PCBs and just generally makes loading and unloading the tools much more reliable. From there, it's honestly just been an endless loop of fixing toolhead communication issues, failed thermistors, and timer too close crashes, and then calibration after calibration after calibration, which, as you can probably tell, there's still quite a lot more calibration to be done. But you guys have already seen much more than enough suffering throughout this series. No. So let's go ahead and skip to the long-awaited payoff, the printer in action. Sorry guys, but after a print or two, things started breaking, because of course they did. The 3D printed shuttle basically tore itself apart when we tried to print prime lines at the front of the bed because the cables weren't long enough, and then when we tried to fix it, and then again when we tried to replace it, nothing lined up properly, which we realized may have actually been due to a flawed design of the X end stop. In short, it has been a real continuation of a real nightmare, almost as if the printer sensed that we were this close and then decided to self-destruct rather than actually crossing the finish line. Now, I do have some CNC machined parts coming from LDO Motors to replace the shuttle, but they won't arrive until well after this video is scheduled to be released. So for now, let's keep going with the video, and hopefully by the end of it, I'll have even more footage of this thing printing. But to be even more honest, we're all pretty exasperated at this point and ready to throw this thing in the trash. But hey, at least we got it printing. Once. But now, the question on everyone's mind. Was it all worth it? Well, as with all questions worth asking, the answer depends. In this case, it depends on your reasoning. See, I do think that there are still quite a few good reasons to embark on a build like this, and we'll get to them in just a minute. But first, let's talk about a few very bad reasons. First, they're saving money. Don't get me wrong, up until very recently, as Michael Laws of Teaching Tech proved, you could save a lot of money by building your own tool changer out of pre-built tool heads and 3D printed parts. But all that has changed pretty quickly, especially now that Sovol has begun marketing the M1D, their own 7-tool-headed IDEX tool changer, for just $40 more than it would have cost Michael to build a 2-headed version based on the SV08. And that's not accounting for the value of your time and labor. And that's actually the more affordable route. If you go the route I did and start delving into custom tool heads, upgraded hot ends, and custom extruders and all that, you could very easily end up spending twice what it would cost to buy a ready-made product off the shelf. Again, not including labor. But I mean, it's not a fair comparison, right? Like, surely with all these custom upgraded parts from the best manufacturers in the industry, my machine will outperform a cheaper, mass-produced, off-the-shelf tool changer, right? Well, I'm not actually sure. For one, after 6 months of tweaking and refining my DIY setup, I'm not completely confident that a swapping mechanism based on imperfect 3D printed parts can actually compare to the reliability of a mass-produced CNC machined mechanism. Maybe, but I'm just not sure. Though, to be completely fair, since we started this project, well-known and reputable manufacturers like LDO Motors and Physek have come out with CNC machined versions of these parts, which I have no doubt will make things much more reliable and much more durable than the 3D printed version. So do take that into consideration. Plus, as far as speed of tool changes goes, obviously it's going to be faster to change tools on a printer that was designed from the ground up to house 7 of them rather than on a printer that has to adapt to house them and swap the tools at the top. But what about the other aspects of performance? You know, higher flow rates, better handling of flexibles, superior cooling, higher temperatures, all that kind of stuff. Well, I haven't yet tested the M1D to be able to compare, but beyond that, Sovol has confirmed that they are going to be open sourcing the hardware of their M1D, which means that it is going to be relatively easy to upgrade and modify it to your heart's content, just like this printer was. In fact, I'm sure that there are plenty of designers out there already working on upgraded toolhead designs for both stock and aftermarket components. So if you think about it, with the amount of money that you're actually saving from not self-sourcing all of the different components individually at retail, you could treat even the store-bought M1D as a platform for upgrading and tinkering and get to the same or better results without having to build everything else from scratch. Which leads us to the software side. It seems like every day over the last few months, there's been new talk about legislation that would aim to control what you can and cannot 3D print, not to mention some manufacturers locking down their ecosystems even further and telling you how you can use your hardware. So for many people, building your own 3D printer is a way to ensure that you will continue to have complete control over it and that you can run whatever open source firmware or software you choose. And yet, here again, that's actually not such a clear-cut win for the DIY anymore. These days, there are a number of open source tool changers already on the market, and the M1D is actually going to be no different. No cloud required, nothing locking you out of flashing the machine on your own mainline Klipper. You're in complete control with that too. By the way, now is probably a good time to let you guys know that this video is sponsored by Sovol, but they have been completely hands-off on the entire thing, and all opinions expressed here are of course my own, based on my own experience building a tool changer versus buying one. Fortunately, whichever way you do decide to go after watching this video, Sovol has you covered because they now offer the SV08 and the SV08 Max. They also offer affordable spare tool heads for the tinkerers, or for the it just works crowd, they are now taking pre-orders on the M1D. And in case you haven't heard about the M1D, oh brother, let me tell you about it real quick. It's pretty exciting. 7 tool heads, independent dual extrusion, copy mode, mirror mode, true multi-material printing, up to 300 degrees Celsius, fully enclosable, open source hardware and software. It's kind of everything that I wanted to create with my own project, except more and half the price without the 2 years of frustration, though the new friends aren't included, so that's something. In any case, if that sounds interesting to you, we'll go ahead and leave a link in the description for you to go ahead and check them out. And thanks to Sovol for supporting this project and open source as a whole. Okay, let's get back to it. So, pretty cut and dry. No, you don't save money, it probably won't perform that much better, and you don't gain any more freedom or control. We can officially declare building your own tool changer as dead as a doorknob, right? Well, not so fast, because as I see it, there are still a number of very good reasons to just build it yourself. The first, and actually probably biggest one, is going to be that you have special requirements. See, the M1D, and really any consumer-grade tool changer, is a volume play. To make these machines so affordable and reach economies of scale, brands need to make it as appealing to as many average consumers as possible. And let's face it, in today's landscape of consumer 3D printing, that realistically means quickly churning out beautiful, multicolor prints in PLA and PETG. Do I doubt that the enclosed version of this printer or any commercial tool changer can handle ABS, nylon, or polycarbonate? No, not at all. But if you're talking about more than one standard deviation from the normal consumer's use case, then they just might not be ideal for it. I, for example, throughout the process of this build, decided to upgrade my SV08 to use CNC machined components on all of the different extrusions and added powerful fans on the boards of every single one of the tools, all in anticipation of adding a powerful AC-powered chamber heater that's going to enable me to print very high temperature materials. Now, for the average user, these upgrades would unnecessarily inflate the cost of the machine and turn more people away. Plus, there's a safety factor in having an AC heated chamber. So it's not very likely you're gonna see a low-cost consumer printer with those kinds of features. Or how about flexibles? While I have no doubt that the M1D will have decent performance in printing your 90, 85, and maybe even 80A TPUs, I do doubt that it's designed to handle filaments as squishy as 70A, considering most of the 3D printers that I have can't handle that material. But that's exactly why Nadir, Jacques, and I chose to build 2 of my 7 tool heads with the legendary Bondtech LGX extruder instead of the typical BMG. And these use cases aren't even that extreme. I mean, what if you just need 8 tool heads or a 500mm cubed build volume? What if you need 450°C hot end or DLC coated extruder gears that are going to allow you to print hundreds of kilos of ultra abrasive filaments before needing replacement? You probably don't, but for those who do, building your own custom tool changer is still going to be an order of magnitude cheaper than even the most affordable industrial tool changer machines. Which leads me to the second good reason to build a tool changer, and that's innovation and pushing the envelope. At last year's Formnext, during the launch of the Index, I asked Bondtech engineer Olaf Ogland, "Did you guys just kill the tool changer?" And his answer really surprised me. I really hope not. And that's because, as has always been the case with consumer 3D printing, future innovation is highly dependent on folks like you and me, well, probably not me, tinkering in their garages. Whether you have an interesting new idea for using servos to swap hot ends instead of entire tool heads, or a clever motion system design that's going to allow us to reap the benefits of both IDEX and tool changers at once. If you're looking to push the envelope, there really is no alternative to a custom machine that you build from the ground up. Actually, that makes me think of another good reason, and that's just to give new life to an old 3D printer. Because, unfortunately, many manufacturers out there don't or can't offer upgrade paths if, say, you want to convert your H2S into an H2D or an H2C, or your Creality K2 Plus into a Klitech. But if you already have a 3D printer out there, like a Voron or an SV08 or any number of open source 3D printers, then a DIY tool changer is just a great way to give it a new life rather than replacing it. That not only will probably save you money versus buying a completely new printer, but it also will save the printer from either ending up in the landfill or just taking up space and collecting dust in your garage. And that truly is actually one of my favorite things about 3D printing, the fact that we can use it as a tool to upgrade and fix things rather than always replacing them, even if, it takes months or years to do so. But there are still some good reasons to build your own, even if it costs more and even if it doesn't outperform the rest. And that's for the love of the game. Because as many have said before, there are numerous distinct sub-hobbies within the hobby of 3D printing. And one of them, one of the bigger ones actually, is building machines. This is why there are still thriving communities of people building vorons and VZ bots and positrons and many more, even when there are much cheaper and in many cases better performing printers down at your local micro center. Speaking from experience, building a 3D printer is a really fun and really rewarding endeavor, and one that you'll enjoy every single time you watch it print. But for those who've already built a printer or two and conquered that mountain, or those who are looking for an even more intense challenge, the next logical step is, of course, to build a much more challenging printer. Which leads us to the next good reason, and that's to challenge yourself or those around you. Because, as my friends and I learned over the course of 2 very long years, building a tool changer isn't just more work than building a single tool head printer like we might have thought. It's actually much more challenging on so many levels than the sum of its parts. You've got mounting, motion, safe travel clearances, and an endless stream of issues that crop up when you're multiplying the complexity of both the hardware and the firmware by a factor of 7. But if you're looking for the challenge, either for yourself or perhaps for someone else in your life, it just might be worth it. After all, as a dad, I can think of no better way for my son to learn engineering, industrial design, problem solving, dealing with frustration, and a whole lot more than by building a literal piece of cutting-edge industrial equipment in our living room together. And that actually brings me to my final reason, and that's community and bonding. No, seriously, I've joked before that I don't want to fall into the cliche trap of saying the real tool changer was the friends we built along the way, but far and away, the most valuable outcome of this journey for me hasn't actually been the printer itself. It's been the friendships, the memories, and the laughs that were forged along the way. And I know that's cliche, but whether you end up building your own tool changer with your kids, a few buddies over beers, or just the new friends that you'll make within the Stealth Changer Discord community, I honestly think that you really can't overstate the value of a good, challenging project in bringing people together. I mean, where else in the world will you see a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian, and an atheist all working together, laughing and celebrating their wins as they pursue a common goal? It's actually freaking beautiful. So, would I do it again? Oh, hell. No, probably not. Don't get me wrong, that isn't me telling you not to build one. After all, if you are one of those edge cases, or you do want the challenge, or this is your idea of a good time, then I think you absolutely should do it. And here, once again, I do just have to pause for the sake of fairness and remind you that we did decide to make our own fork of the already pretty well-developed and well-tested Stealth Changer project. And we based it on a never-before-applied toolhead as opposed to using one of the many toolheads that had already been rigorously tested with that project. So while building a tool changer is a pretty momentous undertaking no matter which route you go, I do have no doubt that if you decide to stay mainline and use the files that have already been tested by others rather than forging your own path, you will have a significantly easier time. So take that into consideration. But for me, I think this project has quite thoroughly exhausted my appetite for building custom printers, or even upgrading printers. Now don't get me wrong, I still do plan to enjoy the occasional open source build on the channel, if it's well documented, clear, finished, and free of surprises. But I do think, for me, going forward, I'm gonna stick to projects that are finished, with complete, fully sourced parts kits, rather than the experimental and cutting edge kind that take 2 years worth of redesigning, ordering, waiting 4 weeks, and then reordering even more parts when you realize you got the wrong ones. Builds, for example, like the Box Turtle AMS system, which was a really enjoyable build that I would love to do again. I actually did a whole video all about it, which you can go ahead and check out right here. You know, in case you're part of the 71.5% of viewers who think they're subscribed, but actually aren't. Hint, hint. Anyways, that's all for this week, but I'll see all of you on the next layer.